You're listening to Coffee with Innovate Finance, a podcast series where we're speaking with experts from the industry on the changing face of financial services and the future of fintech and financial innovation. I am Rashi Pandey, Head of Membership and Growth, and I'm very pleased to welcome Andrew Rabbit, who's the CEO and co-founder at Incuto. So what is Incuto? Incuto is a socially profitable financial technology company who work with credit unions and the community banking sector as a technology partner to develop financial technology aimed at helping everyone access low cost, high quality financial services. So, thank you so much for joining us today, Andrew.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to speak to you.
It definitely is. Likewise. So, Andrew, can you tell us a bit more about your role at Incuto and your background?
Sure. So I'm as you said, I'm the CEO and co-founder. My focus is heavily on the strategy of the business. I've come from a bit of a mixed background, actually. Started in my early career working in a charity, helping people with housing, financial, and mental health issues. And then moved on to working with larger organizations, looking at behavior change and using data and analytics to influence the way that organizations change. So worked with big organizations like the NHS and major supermarkets, all of which was a bit thankless. But then we met a credit union during the time that we were doing that, and it was the first time I'd ever come across one. So that's how we got into this sector in the first place.
That's great, Andrew. And can you briefly explain what Incuto does? I mean, I kind of gave a one sentence summary, but if you could, tell us a little more about, how you guys work, that would be great.
Sure. Look, I came into this with a strong belief, based on my background and everything else, that everyone should have access to affordable financial services. And so when we came across credit unions for the first time, I was completely hooked. I'd never heard of them, didn't know what they did, and realized that actually one of their big challenges is exactly that. Nobody knows that they're there. They're supporting some of the most vulnerable people in society, but actually the people who work in them are genuinely some of the nicest people you could ever want to meet. And they're working against this backdrop of a massive demand from a group of, wide range of people in society who might not even know that they exist at this point. So our job is to support them, and them being credit unions, CDFIs, community banks, to basically be more resilient and sustainable. So so they can help more people. So we've created a technology platform and a load of key partnerships which help them to reduce all their costs, improve the services, and as you said in the intro, we focus on being socially profitable, i.e., every pound we make, we put more back into society as a result.
That's such a great way of thinking. And like you said, you weren't aware of credit unions. By the way, I just want to say it's not only you. I think there are a lot of people who don't realize the importance of having them in the society and the kind of work that they do for financial inclusion as well. So it's great to hear that you are working and partnering with them, deliver their proposition further, right? So what was the original idea behind it once you found out, these guys exist? Then what next? How did it bubble up?
It's a really good question. So the very first credit union that we met wanted to say happy birthday to all its members, which you would think would be a really simple thing to be able to do. So they wanted to just send a message to people and say happy birthday. And because we were a data company, they couldn't unlock that data from their systems. So they wanted us to help them just to be able to extract a list of people who they could say happy birthday to. So the very first part of our platform was around building something that allowed them to automate saying happy birthday to somebody, right? And it grew from there. So we started working with the organizations where they had an appetite to start to try and automate some of these relatively mundane, pretty repetitive things. And in a lot of cases, things that they'd never been able to do, not that they didn't want to do it, just never didn't have the technology to do it. So we spotted the gap in the market and immediately started to fill that gap. So reminding somebody that their loan is due for payment, or better still, reminding someone that they've just finished paying their loan, would they like another one? Kind of conversations that would normally take place in a typical financial services organization in a bank. Those things would just be happening all the time, a big marketing machine. The credit unions had none of that. So we brought all that to them. And then from there, all of our other services kind of kicked in. So once you've advertised the fact that somebody can apply for a loan and sort of got them into the process of thinking about it, the problem is if the only call to action is pick up the phone and speak to someone, then you've taken an immediate step back. So a lot of the technology that we've developed is around improving the service level, automating the mundane stuff, but then providing the place to go once you've started to engage with the member. So loan application processes, onboarding, withdrawals, checking your balance, all of the kind of services you would expect from a bank, but giving it to a set of organizations who've never been able to access those kind of services.
It's beautiful how it started from such a nice place of trying to wish their customers happy birthday. Wow. So what is Incuto's vision and mission? What drives you guys forward?
Well, like I said, I believe that everyone should have access to ethical, affordable financial services. And in this day and age, especially now, it's becoming more and more evident that that's a struggle for people as they try and engage with those services from mainstream organizations like high street banks and mainstream lenders. More and more people are finding themselves in the position that they are excluded, and they're not necessarily excluded because they've done something terribly wrong. They're just excluded because banks are tightening their lending rules, or they've engaged with products like buy now, pay later, things that they didn't even realize would cause them problems that are now starting to impact. So our mission really centers around making sure that these organizations, these ethical financial services organizations, which are basically mini banks, are capable of being able to serve that population. Because what we know happens if they're not there, is that people end up in significantly worse positions. They end up with short-term high-cost lenders, or worse, they end up with illegal money lenders. And so we're really trying to create a sustainable and resilient safety net of these organizations who exist and have existed for decades, but nobody knows they're there. So make sure they're prominent, make sure they're sustainable, make sure they have all the services that they need to be competitive, and make sure they've got a really low cost base so that they can do that in a much more competitive way in the market as well. So not just appealing to people who might be financially excluded, but also a really great service to people who are not financially excluded, who are just looking for a nicer, safer, warmer, ethical place to bank. That makes sense?
Yes, it does, and you said ethical a few times. I think that has become quite key and quite important to the customers who are very aware nowadays. So that's great. That's really good to hear. But of course, starting a business is never easy. So what were the challenges you faced when Incuto started, and what are the challenges now? Have they changed, evolved over time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when we first started, our big challenge was around funding. So I was really
Of
lucky to
course.
find someone who would support the business. My co-founder, who was able to support the business in the early days. We've got some amazing social impact investors, Ascension and North Star, who Ascension run the Fair by Design Fund. So they've been massively supportive and really helped us to maintain our vision for the business and the path that we're on. I think we were very lucky to be able to do that in quite a simple way. I think the challenges as we move forward have been about how we grow alongside our customers. So one of the things that we've championed along the way is that we behave ethically as well. So we don't see the customer as someone to exploit. We see the customer as someone to partner with. So our entire pricing model is centered around the idea that we charge for transactional things, positive transactional things. So we charge on success or for things that they do that are helping them to reduce their costs. There are no upfront fees. There are no minimum volumes. So really, we've tried to keep in alignment with the things that are making our customers successful too. Now, that's a real challenge because it means that we grow as they do. And so we're placing a lot of emphasis on supporting them, but it's kept us honest. It's meant that we've been able to develop things that they need and want, and they've worked with us to determine that. So lots of positive things. Funding is always a challenge, and it remains so. I think now the challenge is actually about finding investors who believe in the mission. When you're doing that in a seed round, there are lots of investors who talk about impact and want to do that. As you move into Series A, the metrics change. And I think in our world now, it's about making sure that we can prove not only that we're socially profitable, but we're also an investable business from a VC perspective as well at some stage. So.
Of course. Thank you for being very honest and sharing, by the way. We really appreciate that. Clearly, honesty is a core value at Incuto as well. Like you mentioned, these challenges have kept you honest as well. So can you also talk me through how your member services are driving, member engagement and, better automated services and lending?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned about the marketing, and that's obviously a key thing, being able to actually communicate with the membership. And we've got kind of 4 areas that we focus on. The first one is reduction of cost. And so the way we operate is that we've got a whole supply chain out there of things that people do: credit reference searches, payments, sending text messages, sending emails, all that kind of stuff. And what happens typically is these smaller subscale organizations go and have to negotiate contracts directly with those suppliers. So we've done that on their behalf. We've negotiated with the supply chain. We've taken the commitment with the supply chain, and our pricing model is basically a cost plus margin. But typically our costs will have reduced the cost by up to 75% versus going directly to the suppliers. So the first thing we've done is basically aggregated volume so that we can bring an economy of scale to the sector, which we think is really important. It's clearly vital that these organizations can deliver the service that they need to deliver at a low cost. The next thing then is about improving the service level. So the really big thing for us is we can give you a cheaper way of being able to do a faster payment. Now we're going to give you the technology around that faster payment so that somebody's got a button to press to actually make the withdrawal. So and we do that by effectively offering the tech for free. So the stuff that we wrap around those transactions, the credit union doesn't pay for. They pay for the transactions, and that's how we make our money. And all of that basically adds up to a reduction in the amount of back office processing, a reduction in cost, and that frees the credit union up to do the one thing it can do to make money, which is to lend. The only way it makes money is the return on lending. And so it's really important that they get as much capacity to focus on that as they possibly can. So we free up the capacity to do it. And then we've got new services which are allowing us to drive more lending traffic into the credit unions as well. And all of that adds up to box number 4, which is about helping more people. It's what we're focused on. It's what we know they're focused on. So we're trying to make that whole kind of flywheel effect of reducing the costs, improving the services, increasing the amount of lending, and so that we can ultimately just help more people.
That sounds great, actually. And I was going to, literally my next question was going to be about, helping people and of course the cost of living crisis. You guys work very closely with credit unions. And can you just maybe briefly explain how does your, loan comparison product serve as a turning point for these customers with the current cost of living crisis?
Got it. So it's funny. I hope this isn't a controversial comment, but
Go on.
credit unions have been around for decades. And they've been serving some of the most underserved and excluded people in society for many, many, many years. And it's funny how it is only now that we start to add a label of crisis onto this when it starts to affect people who might otherwise imagine that they could just go to a bank. Now, that's important because it means that suddenly people who have a voice have started to talk about the fact that it's a crisis. These organizations have been serving that market for many decades, and they've been exploited themselves in the way that they've done that. They've been exploited from supply chains and technology, and they are the least protected when it comes to being supported by, for example, governments or anybody else, or represented in completely different sort of scope to the way that, for example, high street banks would be protected in that same situation. So these are customers who have been there for many, many years, and nobody's really thinking too much about. These organizations have been there as the safety net for them so that other people don't really have to think about them too much. Today, what we're seeing is, and the price comparison website thing, is that people who are going onto a price comparison website are going there because they fully expect to be given a range of products from a number of high street banks or mainstream lenders that they've heard of. They're just going on to compare the best rate. And what we didn't realize was that up to 40%, and I'll give you some numbers to contextualize that in a minute, but 40% of those customers do not get an offer, right? So since you may be familiar with quotation searches and soft searches and things like that with credit reference agencies. So in order to match you with the best lender, and now doing those kind of searches up front and matching you with the right organization, 40%. Now that 40% is upwards of 400,000 people a month.
Oh, wow.
Who are not receiving an offer from a mainstream financial services provider. Our credit unions can serve at least half that market, but they're not there in that panel of lenders. So what we're doing is we're putting them into that panel. So our credit unions, for the first time, are appearing in the price comparison website up alongside high street banks and names you've heard of. And it's the first time that mainstream group of customers will have ever heard of these credit unions. So from our perspective, that third box, that generate more loans, drive more lending, this is bringing a whole new audience into these organizations. And it's a really critical audience because not only does the borrower need the lender, but the lender needs the borrower. So it's the perfect setup to being able to connect the dots of people. And we're basically the pipe work in between. We're making it possible for the lender to make a decision within seconds to say yes to somebody in a way that they would never have been able to do before, which we're really excited about.
I can imagine. I mean, helping so many underserved customers. Wow. Thank you for shining a light on those numbers. We do not realize, like you said, a lot of things that go behind the scenes.
Well, many of those customers don't even know that they're excluded.
Yeah.
Not tried to actually access a product. They're about to find out. And as we go through the cost of living crisis, which is a crisis, it's a significantly bigger number of people who are going to be impacted by it. As we go through this, more and more people will suddenly discover that they are being excluded. And we've got to make sure that there's somebody there to take that and support them in the right way when they find that out.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So, of course, you guys work with credit unions, and, we all know digital transformation is not easy for any organization. So I want to ask, how does Incuto help make digital transformation easier and faster? And how do you guys differentiate yourselves from the other firms and platforms within the space?
So it always sounds like a bit of a cliche when you say we're a partner to our customers, not a supplier to them. But we really are, right? So not only do we align our success with them, But actually, we don't write lines of code unless our customers need it. And transformation is a really difficult thing for any organization. I know from my own background, having worked in really large organizations who are going through transformation, that can be daunting. But one of the biggest challenges for this sector is that it costs a lot of money, it takes time, it takes a lot of resource, and frankly, the risk is significantly higher here than it is anywhere else. And from our perspective, the key to success of this is that we make it as simple as possible. It's just baby steps, it's modular, there's an immediate benefit to it. And right now, today, credit unions just need to grow the loan book. That's what they need to do. So it happens that, because we've got this huge number of people who've never even heard of a credit union, let alone borrowed from one, that we need to connect those dots. And so because we've been able to be quite agile, we have all the technology that we need to be able to go deliver things in a modular way to just address whatever the next burning need is. So we don't really look at digital transformation as a major project. We look at digital transformation as a series of steps that get taken to fix the things that need to get fixed. So if you're going to, and I described that flywheel already, but if you're going to have capacity to lend, you've got to fix the inefficiencies. And if you're going to be able to lend at an acceptable cost, you've got to be able to get the cost down. So we just look at this as a sequence of things that happen that don't really take people out of the comfort zone. And we partner. It's in our interest that the credit unions are able to use our technology and do the things that we need them to be able to do, and that they grow. So actually, we become an embedded part of that transformation anyway.
Wow. I love the fact that you ended on that note, that you've become an embedded part of that transformation. That's wonderful. So are there any success stories or, partnerships that you can, share with us publicly?
So our partners are critically important to us. And rather than calling out one in particular, I think it's probably just worth mentioning some of our key partnerships, actually. So we work with ClearBank, who are awesome. They offer our virtual accounts, faster payments, direct debits, services that basically wouldn't be available to the credit unions in their own right necessarily, because some of them are too small to be able to access those services directly. And just to set that in perspective, Incuto has actually become an FCA registered firm so that we can be the supplier of some of those transactions. So we're a bit like go cardless with direct debits, but go cardless for credit unions, because some of them are too small to be able to get to the level that they need to be able to guarantee and underwrite that. So we've taken a position with some of those. And ClearBank have been amazing in being able to support us in doing that. We work with TransUnion for all the credit reference data and anti-fraud tools, Experian, similar kind of data, but also Experian alongside with the marketplaces, these price comparison website integrations, because they manage an awful lot of those. We work with Post Office. So our credit unions obviously are smaller scale than a big high street bank. And as we know, high street banks are retreating from the high street. And so post offices have stepped into the breach to become the branch network. And now we're making it possible for credit unions to use that same infrastructure, which is amazing. I mean, the post office are just fantastically excitable all the time. And we're really, really excited. We've been working with that one for a long time to try and get that one live. So now credit union members can walk into a post office branch to take cash over the counter rather than, and it can be their local branch rather than having to travel to go to a credit union branch. And we're just about to start working with MasterCard, looking at how we bring a sustainable debit card to the sector as well. So lots of key partnerships for us. They're all a success story because they've taken our word for the fact that we've got something transformational to do here and we can go change the world. And they have absolutely bought into and believed that vision and that mission. And honestly, couldn't thank them enough, because we wouldn't be here without them. So really massively grateful. They're all a success story from our perspective.
That's wonderful. I was going to say, I mean, at the end of the day, it's ending on such a nice, positive note. You've mentioned ethical, sustainable, and they're key, priorities for Innovate Finance as well. So, Andrew, before I let you go, can you share, what's next for Incuto? Do you have any exciting news, as well as, being a founder, co-founder and CEO of a fintech? If you were to give one piece of advice to your fellow founders and CEOs, what would it be? Especially right now, right? With all the cost of living crisis and inflation and whatnot.
So I'll start with that one,
Yeah.
the advice piece. We've just gone through a process of trying to raise investment,
Yeah.
during which, and we were not successful in doing it, which is, a really big thing. And I say not successful. We took a decision to not take money from investors. And we did that because everything we were doing was a compromise. We've spent a period of time reinventing ourselves to suit somebody else. And when you take a step back, don't be afraid of sticking with the purity of purpose, because it's so much more valuable than anything else you will ever have. And the compromise you make to step away from that purity of that purpose that you came into the market with is a massive regret. We got so close to accidentally stepping away from what we came here to do. So close. And I can't tell you how much happier I've been over the last few months, knowing that we did not take that bad decision to compromise on our values, our beliefs, our principles. And not because investors are bad, but because they have a playbook. They know what things work for different businesses in different sectors. And what we know is that we haven't finished our work here yet. We've still got a lot of work to do. And in terms of what's coming up next, one of the big challenges that you get into when you go through that process of investment is that you make lots of promises. You overpromise, and you massively overinflate the things that you think you can achieve just because it's the exciting thing to do. And there's a PowerPoint presentation in there somewhere. Actually, for us, the next 12 months, there's this huge tidal wave of people who will need the support of the people that we help. So they will need credit unions to be there. And we came into this market 5+ years ago and said, we will make it possible for you to be able to serve that market, and no matter what. And so actually in the next 12 months, we're going to take our opportunity to prove that we were right, that we could. And that's exactly what we're going to do. No overpromises, no big excitements. The exciting thing will be that we actually get to support those organizations now to demonstrate that the promise that we made them when we came into the market, we're now going to fulfill. We're going to make sure that they emerge from this significantly stronger and much more sustainable, much more resilient, and that they in turn get to pass on that sustainability and resilience to the people that they're helping. So next 12 months, that's our focus. No big excitements, no major news, just simply delivering on the promise that we made.
You know what? My key takeaway from this is be true to yourself, be honest, and, get your values there and keep going. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Andrew, for speaking with us today. I had a blast.
Thank you. No, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me on to speak to you.
No, this was wonderful. And, I keep saying this, but genuinely more power to you and to the team at Incuto. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
And thank you to all our listeners. Thank you so much once again for tuning into Coffee with Innovate Finance. Do look out for upcoming episodes and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn for more on our events and programs. As always, until next time, take very good care of yourselves.